Welcome to Cars on Call. I am automotive journalist Steve Schutz. I'm here with trauma surgeon Stephan Moran and car collector, car historian Adams Hudson. And guys, I want to get right into this. We're going to talk about a rumor, and then we're going to talk about Stephan's trip to Ireland, and it ties directly to safety. It's a great conversation with our trauma surgeon about safety in Ireland and the UK. We're going to go back to Italy with Adams, and then we're going to finish with a big conversation about Cadillac. That's good. I'm really psyched about that one, guys. So let me start. I heard something, and I want to talk about it. And as soon as I started thinking that, I said, this is an unsubstantiated rumor. We can't just go into unsubstantiated rumors. That's not right. And then I thought, well, one of my favorite things is to talk about unsubstantiated rumors. So I'm going to start with one. 911 ST, it's going to be coming out soon. It's a hot 911. Supposedly, it's going to be basically a GT3 RS with a manual transmission and no wing. Adams, I'm going to start with you. You're a Porsche guy. You've had a bunch of Porsches. Is this like over the top, or is it great, or is it what?
I'm kind of in. I'm going into the great category, and leave it to Porsche to continue to slice and dice and make submodels out of submodels and other submodels. And of course, as we've said before on this about various other Porsche models, they're going to sell every blooming one they come out with. But who's to argue with the 503 horsepower, naturally aspirated flat six and the tail of a 911 with no wing, as in tail, on it, and a 6-speed manual? I mean, I'm a fan. I like it. It's a lightened version. As you said, it's kind of the GT3 RS, but it's in a 911 T-shell. I'd go for it.
Yeah, but they won't make as many as people want to buy. But I think it's cool. I looked at it. The only thing stylistically, I'm not big on that GT3 hood on the classic 911 without the whale tail and the carbon and the Weissach and all that stuff. I do like the kind of double bubble roof, but when I look at the hood that's got the two big flat scoops, the GT3S, but nothing else about the car screams GT3. There's no tail in the back. That's the only thing stylistically for me, but it's not going to make a bit of difference what I think. But looking at it, I still would like a little more of the stealthier version of that, that it doesn't, I think the hood, changing the roof would be enough for me, but I think the hood kind of looks out of place because that's kind of a boy racer hood on a car that doesn't really look boy racer.
Yeah, I don't disagree. The double bubble roof, I'd actually forgotten that was in the specs, but that's sort of like the Sport Classic that they introduced when was that? Was that a 2010, 2012 vehicle somewhere in the 997 world?
It was 997. We didn't get it here, but it did have this double bubble. Yeah.
And it sort of played down. It was the subtlety that Stephan, I agree with you. I am so over tails and brackets and side scoops and overdone stripes, but I don't mind a little nostril sort of thing in the hood. I think that's okay. And apparently they need to do it for heat evacuation.
Yeah, this is coming from a man who's deleting the hood scoop on his Cobra build as well. So,
I think it's pretty understated. What a regular person who's not a 911 guy or a Porsche geek would not notice it. That person would not say, "Oh my gosh, it's got intakes on the hood." They would just assume that's the way 911s are. It's that big whale tail, or not a whale tail. It's the big wing in the back that I think gets everyone's attention. And I think it's a turnoff. I think this is really, really smart. None of us are going to get one. We're even if we went to our dealer and said, "Hey, we'd like one," we're not big enough fish to get one of these cars. They're going to be super expensive, and you have to be somebody to get one. But the somebody that gets one of these cars is going to be very happy. It's a manual transmission, lots of power, normally aspirated. This is going to be a great car to drive. To me, it's like the 911R from the 991.1 era. It's made for driving fun and driving excellence. And I think for that reason, the Dakar was like, oh, give me a break. It's stupid. No one's going to drive it the way it's supposed to. It's a cars and coffee thing, and you're going to get the stupid tint. Well, the ST, people are going to drive it.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a good delineation. That the dark cars will sit in the garage until the car's in coffee, and then they'll go back home. But I feel like people put the miles on this car.
Yeah, but they
Well,
only sell 40 of them. There'd be such collector's items or 50 of them that people aren't going to want to drive them, you know. They're going to
I
watch their
think they will.
values shoot up.
They sold, I think, 991 911Rs. I think they're going to sell. It's always a number that relates to the Porsche, like 1948, which is their year of origin. This is a 75th year of Porsche. I bet they'll build 900 or 1948 of them. I think they learned from the 911R. They didn't build enough of those. I think they're going to build 2000 or so. My guess would be 1948.
I think that's a good pick, Stephen. And I guess that also means it's going to be June 8th, I believe. Is that sort of the projected launch date because it coincides exactly with their beginnings?
that is, yeah, another unsubstantiated rumor, but yeah, I'm
It
psyched.
was a rumor until you heard it here. Now it's fact.
And now it's fact. Cars I call fact. All right, we got to move on to reality. Stephan, we missed you. You were gone, and now you're back. You and your wife went to Ireland. Your ancestral home is what we called it last show. Talk about that, because there was, you have a lot of kind of safety thoughts about Ireland in addition to the car thoughts.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to go back to Ireland. I'm a Moran. They pronounce it Moran over there, a Moran. And then my wife said O'Kelly, and we came to find out that we're actually from the same, our clans are from the same county. So I may have married
Wow.
my cousin. But in Alabama, it's just not a big deal anyway.
Yeah.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree down here.
Yeah. People pick up chicks at their family reunions down here.
Well, anyway, so we spent 10 days in Ireland, and it was a big deal. I've never driven on the left side of the road, except for, I wouldn't count Grand Cayman Island, which has one little 2-lane road. I wouldn't count that, but we'd planned to do a big tour driving around Ireland. And, I took driving on the left side as a big deal. I took this seriously. And Steve-O brought this up in conversation. Remember, I didn't remember this, but he talked about it. But back in 1987, Matthew Broderick, famous for Ferris Bueller's Day Off, he was also the voice of Simba. His girlfriend at the time, Jennifer Grey, of the same movie, as well as Dirty Dancing fame. August 5th, 1987, actually the night before the release of her big Dirty Dancing movie, he was driving a BMW 316 rental, and he was in Northern Ireland, which is not the Republic of Ireland, very separate northern part of Great Britain. I did not go there. You only go there if you want to travel back to the 70s, apparently. But anyway, he crossed into the wrong lane and collided head-on with a Volvo. And very unfortunately, Anna Gallagher, 28, and her mother, Margaret Dougherty, 63, were killed instantly. So a tragic story of American driving in a country that drives on the side of the road, and he forgot where he was and was on the wrong side of the road. Well, this kind of brings it back full circle, what I've talked a lot about in safety with my parents, and still listen to my kids. And I used this same lesson when I was in Ireland, that when you're I noticed when I was doing trauma that young drivers and old drivers came in with similar collisions. They had side collisions. They got broadsided. And what happened to young drivers is they think they can shoot across an intersection, making a left-hand turn on a 4-lane, and they judge the distance and speed of the oncoming vehicles wrong, and they get hit. Old people just don't see it because your vision declines. I always tell my older drivers as well as young drivers, you need a co-pilot in the front seat, especially when you're crossing lanes. If there's not a traffic light, you need to beware, because that's where you're very likely to have an accident. So when we went to drive in Ireland, my wife was the designated co-pilot. And in aviation, we call that crew resource management, how the pilot and the co-pilot interact. The co-pilot can never hesitate to speak their mind about anything going on, any decision being made. So when she stopped throwing her arms in the air and jumping and screaming, acting like we were going to die, I said, honey, you got to settle down, because you can't freak me out, okay? I mean, so, and then, she said, what kind of car did you get? I got a Volkswagen.
It's bad when she does that. It's even worse when she's right.
Yeah. So she said, what kind of car are you going to get? I said, I got a Volkswagen Golf. And she goes, you get the automatic? I said, no, I got a stick, man. She's like, you are not driving a stick shift. I said, first of all, you'll be shifting with your left hand. She said, You need to be concentrating on your driving, not shifting the car. So I caved in. Very wise decision.
I think
Absolutely
she's right. Don't you
wise.
think? I mean, Stephan, don't you think she's right?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, she's as always completely right. It would have been idiotic for me to be concentrating on shifting a car, what gear I'm in. No, I need to be focused on where I am on the road. Great. So number one, automatic. Once again, she's right. And then she said, why are we picking this car up at the airport, driving into Dublin for 2 days? Change the reservation. We will pick it up and leave the airport, get it straight on the interstate where we're headed out to the country. We don't need our first driving days to be in Dublin. Co-pilot decision. Another one, because she was actively involved in driving. Perfect decision. So
did she get promoted to pilot after these two decisions?
And I got demoted. Yeah. And then my buddy Jimbo, who's a hardcore listener. Remember, listeners, like, subscribe, and all that again. But Jimbo, who lived in England for a long time, he said, remember, the mantra, constantly, drive left, yield right, drive left, yield right. So I was constantly thinking that in my mind. And that's really important because a car on my left at an intersection was coming across my lane to make a right-hand turn, which is like in the left in the US. I immediately thought he was coming in. I wanted to immediately make the wrong decision to move over to the right. So that mantra, drive left, yield right. So we get to the Dublin airport. I pick up the Golf, and it's got scrapes all down the left side. It's got a replacement mirror on the left side. I'm like, what the hell? So I take pictures of it. Well, I found out why.
Had recently rented that.
Yeah, obviously they rent to Americans because it's an automatic. So you get in it, it's got a sticker on the steering wheel that says, reminds you to drive to the left, right there in the top of the steering wheel. And then on the dash to the right, they've got a picture of 2 lanes, and they're telling you to focus on the right lane. Okay, to keep your attention on the right lane. So I get in the car, I set up all the mirrors, I set up the rear view mirror, and then we pull out of the rental car area, and within 50 feet, I'd already curbed the left side of the car.
Wow.
It took me until the 3rd day of driving to geospatially understand where the left side of the car was. It was amazing how I kept drifting further to the left and that was just freaking me out. It's like, I'm not an idiot. I'm a good driver, but let me tell you what, that was amazing. And that's why they had that sticker on the right front, because this is what people do. And clearly somebody had drifted over to the left, taken out the left side mirror, and the scrapes were from the hedges. There are no shoulders in Ireland except for on the major interstates. It is a wall or it's hedges. Right there where the pavement ends is a hedge. And then the smart thing that they do in Ireland is, we've got those little reflectors they stick in the middle of the road all over here. They put metal ones on both sides of the road and in the middle. So you get too far to the left, thunka, 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 get back to the middle. You too far to the right, thunka, 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 get back to the left. So they've had Americans driving around there long enough to figure that out. Anytime, then we had Google Waze, forget Waze, didn't work well. We used Google Maps, and Ellen was looking ahead. She's like, curve coming up, because they'll have a speed limit at 80, but there's no warning sign for the curve coming up. You need to be taking 40 or 60. So Ellen was, just like a co-pilot, telling me curve coming up, or rally car driver in the left seat, giving me notes. And then she's like, we're coming up to a roundabout. She said, we're taking the 3rd exit, which is, like taking a right-hand turn, go to the middle of the roundabout, then we'll X over to the left lane, blinker when you come around the 2nd. So she's like, no, next is your exit, get over. So I could really concentrate on lane discipline, staying in my side. And really, it was, I don't think I could have done it by myself, but it would have been ugly and scary. I'd have made some mistakes, but so having her as a full-on co-pilot, just like old people here in the US, same thing. Just like my parents, my mother is the co-pilot in the right seat over here, and young drivers need the same. So we were cruising around, and we were doing what's the Ring of Kerry, which is this gorgeous peninsula. And we needed to get back to the other side of the peninsula, and Google Maps gave us several options. We just picked the shortest. Boom. Well, something we didn't realize till we had breakfast. So the roads in Ireland are numbered. So a single digit road is an interstate. A 2-digit road is what we would call a nice 2-lane road. A 3-digit road is really barely wide enough for 2 cars. And then a 4-digit road is basically a paved carriageway where the horse and buggy used to go. We ended up driving 25 kilometers through the Irish Highlands on a 2-lane paved road with sheep everywhere. Saw one car that he had to back up like a quarter mile into this little area so we could squeeze by. And I just had my hands gripped to the wheel because we had to go up over the pass and down the other side. So we learned our lesson about Google Maps and the shortest route possible. And Google Maps always said shortest route, but that was calculating it by the speed limit, which you could never do. So the other thing that was everybody drove the speed limit over there. They maybe went 2 or 5 kilometers.
Interrupt.
Yeah.
Google Maps has been out for a long time. You think they would have figured? I mean, Google's map has been out what, 15 years? Why didn't they have that noted?
Yeah, they need to. But so we got on the interstate going back, and the car I was in, the Volkswagen, had the adaptive cruise control, which is a form of ADAS, automatic driving assistant device. And it also had predictive cruise control. So it's really cool. You'd be on a 2-lane road, you have it on 80 kilometers an hour, which I could do. And you come to a town where the speed drops to 60. The Volkswagen would automatically start to slow down and automatic cruise control to the 60-mile speed limit. I thought that was really cool.
Kilometers.
Sorry, kilometers. And then when you come into
By the way,
town,
Stephan, the change miles to kilometers, that probably has some implications for safety.
yeah, for Americans, yeah, I did Google in kilometers. I changed it over to kilometers. So yeah, you're actually doing 80 kilometers an hour. You really, you're not going quite this fast. You're not doing 80 miles an hour. You're doing a lot less than that. But the other thing, when you come into towns, they've got a sign up with a radar that's telling you your speed. And when you slow down to the speed limit of 60 or 30, the sign flips over and says, "Thank you," in green.
Wow.
That's pretty slick.
Positive reinforcement. And then lots of traffic calming. The roads narrow in the town. People are allowed to park on the side, which now makes it a 1-lane road. Humps everywhere. Nobody sped up in the towns. Now, we did have run across a wreck on the interstate. I put it on the adaptive cruise control. I never put my foot on the gas or the brakes. I left the cruise control set at 100 kilometers an hour. I would go 10 kilometers an hour up to 60, back to 20, and it kept the distance forever. What I noticed was this wasn't like America, where you get a stop on the interstate. It is start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. Because Americans are impatient. They floor it to get up, then they slow down, they floor it. Here, everybody just slow rolled and kept traffic moving. It wasn't terrible to be in a traffic jam on the interstate because it was just constantly rolling between 10 to 40 kilometers an hour the whole time, and not this American stuff where your people are on their phones rear-ending somebody in front because they're not paying attention.
Or you get the guy who wants to invent a third lane somewhere where there's not one so he can get ahead. And Steph, you described that, that slow rolling at least keeps progress, and if people ever notice when they're in an American traffic jam to go by an accident or some sort of thing in the road, look at how the truckers treat it. The truckers do the 15 or so mile an hour sort of roll just to let people build a cadence. And you can see the frustration on their face when people are doing just what you're describing, jumping in line, etc.
Yeah. People use their blinkers. And then, the one thing we love, we fell in love with the country of Ireland and its people and its food, and it's a gorgeous country. And they are the most polite people that I've ever met. And I mean, they make the Canadians look like rude Americans. But we were, Ellen and I were going from our hotel back to the car where the car is parked, and we kind of ran across the road with our suitcases. We had plenty of time, but this car beeped its horn at us. I'm like, dude, I had plenty of time. And then we got onto the sidewalk, and this Irishman said, he said, "I'm so sorry. That was so rude of them. They should have never beeped their horn at you. That's impolite. Pedestrians always have the right of way." And I laughed and said, "Yeah, don't worry about it. I think it was an American in the driver's seat of a rental car." And he laughed. But, in America, we take our personal freedoms, override and trump the collective responsibility that we have for preventing accidents in terms of importance. I mean, it's all about us not about a collective responsibility. And driving over there, clearly they have that sense of collective responsibility over there. Yeah, freedom's important, but your freedom can't violate the safety of other drivers that you share the road with. And I really felt that over there. I was sharing the road with people that were attentive to driving, that respected the limits, respected the speed limits in the towns. They were polite. And it was even though I was driving on the wrong side of the road, it was a joy to drive over there. So,
well, Stephan, just you describing just leaving the parking lot. I mean, I could feel my anxiety going up a little bit because I don't believe I would ever be able to make the transition to left hand. And when we had Gary Duncan on a few episodes back, he mentioned all the right hand drive vehicles that he sells to people, with the steering wheel on the right hand side, driving in America. And to me, I don't think I could ever make that mental jump. It's just not in my dictum of understanding that I could make that mirror image swap. And so, I mean, good for you for actually doing it. And I think the new rule of your driving ought to be drive left, yield to Ellen's advice.
yeah. And I forgot one thing. We talked a couple episodes about the new Polestar that doesn't have a rear view mirror. I never used a rear view mirror in this car because I never look. You don't look left enough. Okay, we look right enough, and we're used to it. Yeah. So the rear view mirror was worthless in this car. Now the Europeans have a different driver's side mirror than we do. It's actually got like a built-in blind spot. It's a double mirror like truckers have. Right. Fabulous mirror. I wish we had that mirror over here. I would take that in a heartbeat over our driver's side mirror. So, rear view mirrors are way overrated.
So, I appreciate all that. And I'm like Adams, I don't want to drive over there because I'm afraid I would do something wrong. And, your reaction is going to be wrong if you're in an emergency situation like it was for unfortunately Matthew Broderick. Steph, while you were over there, what was the coolest car you saw? What were some cool Irish? What do they drive that's cool in Ireland?
The only cool cars I saw 3 Audi e-trons, which I thought was really cool. And then I did see a Bentley at a wedding, but the coolest thing I saw was actually a car from the Netherlands. It was a I'm guessing 76 Ford Econoline van that was the exact same color as what we had in 1979. We had a Ford Econoline, and there's that brown. We had the Chateau with the tinted out windows. And I was like, I couldn't believe, I don't know how that dude drove that thing over there.
No kidding. What was that? The Scooby-Doo van? Is that somewhere along the same genre?
Yeah. So that was, I did see one Porsche, nothing fancy. But you could see on the roads over there, all the cars you looked at, you could see were scraped on the left side because, you're going down one of these roads and a bus comes by or tons of Hiluxes, a lot of those, and they look like monster trucks over there compared to everything else. But you're going to tighten up against the hedge driving around because most of the roads were all one lane once you got off the other big roads.
Oh, that's cool. What an experience. I hope I'm sure you'll end up going back now that you've been there because it is, like I said, your ancestral home and also Ellen. So I hope you go back soon.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, my big plan will go to Scotland and then Ireland again.
All right, cool. Well, we're going to go back to Italy because Adams, you gotta talk a little bit of car spotting before we get into our main topic.
Yeah, just a tiny bit of follow up from last week. We covered a good bit of it, and I gotta mention an almost either apology or a clarification. Steve had asked me during the trip to the Ferrari museum over there. He said, "How many Ferraris have you owned?" And I mentioned, and I thought after the episode, man, that probably gave the wrong impression. Being having had a handful of those. Let me just clarify for the listeners. That's over a bunch of years. It's not like I just went out and bought these, either all at once or in rapid succession. That's over a ton of years. And, I'm a car enthusiast, just like the rest of the folks who are listening or watching. And, I probably bought those cars at 1/3 or 1/6 or 1/8 of their value today. So I just kind of want to clarify that particular part. I bought them because I'm a crazy car fan. That's why.
I think you said you had 8 Ferraris. I thought that was cool.
Well, and I wish I could pick 4 of them to have back. That
Yeah.
would be.
And you
that would-
managed to bring Marsha home, and not the Dino from Italy.
Yeah, well, I did. I brought Marsha home, but I did bring home, as I showed Steve, a Ferrari mug and a Ferrari T-shirt.
Okay.
Yeah, and Stefan, he said he's only got 2 payments to go, and they'll both be his. That was funny.
The Ferrari tax. Well, I wanted to mention three things about car spotting in Italy that I just noticed over there, and some of this probably Stefan can echo. First thing, maybe you can't echo this particular one, is the presence of Alfa Romeo. We picked on them about 3-4 episodes back about how poorly they're doing in the U.S. sales wise. But man, they are alive and well over there. The Milanese folks, the folks in Milan, where Alfa Romeo was originally founded, they're still very proud of that brand, even though they realize it's been highly diluted. But you see the tiny Alfas, the super fast Alfas that the police, the Carabinieri, they drive those cars, and will catch you. By the way, twin turbo V6. And then you see some of the older ones, but there's just a ton of Alfas kind of hunting the streets over there, which is kind of cool to see because you don't see them over here. And then the second big thing I noticed was the huge number of stylish, fast wagons. The Audis, the BMWs, the Volvos, the Mercedes, the Jaguars. Even Jaguar had a stylish wagon. I think they may have imported like 4 of them over here. You never see them over here. But there's a lot.
XF. They had XF wagons over here. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good looking vehicle, and you see them over there a whole lot, and they have a way slicker looking silhouette than the big kind of bloated top heavy SUVs that we use, at probably no real reduction in utility, if I had to guess. And then the third thing I noticed over there was the almost complete absence of American cars, other than you'd see, because you would see Jeeps, because of their ownership by Stellantis. And so you would see Jeeps. And Steve, I can hardly even mention the Stellantis name without thinking of what your friend said. Stellantis, if you're feeling like tonight might be the night, remember Stellantis. But
and what he said was, if you have an erection lasting more than 4 hours after taking Stellantis, call your doctor, which is hilarious.
I knew it was a better line than mine, and that's pretty dang good.
It's just funny.
I actually laughed to myself when I saw the Stellantis dealership over there. I sort of chuckled. But and Stephan, sort of in deference to you, I saw an entire 3 Mustangs over a 3-week period that I was there. And none of them, I want to point out, none of them were doing a burnout into a tree after leaving a cars and cars.
Yeah.
But that was the European car spotting, and just observations that are just so highly different than being in the U.S.
All right, a little Alpha trivia that I find fascinating. I don't know that much about old Alphas, and Adams, you know way more than I do, but this is an interesting story. About 10 years ago, Volkswagen Group wanted to buy Alpha. They wanted to buy Alpha really bad, which I knew. I'd read that. And of course, back then it was being run, Volkswagen Group was being run by the great Ferdinand Piëch, who we've talked about on the show before. Well, this is how serious he was. And this infuriated apparently Sergio Marchionne, who owned Fiat or was running Fiat Chrysler and therefore was running Alpha. Ferdinand Piëch let him know that number one, he wanted to buy Alpha. Number two, he already had hired designers, and they had already designed a whole lineup of Alphas, just like, in your face, like, yeah, we're going to buy you. There's nothing you can do about it. We've already got the next Alphas already designed.
Wow. I bet they wish now they'd have followed through.
Yeah, I bet. You mean they wish they'd sold it? Yeah, of course they would have gotten more than it was worth. I think Alpha's not worth much now. So
absolutely agreed.
Hey, I want to shift gears now that we're all back stateside. And Stephan, you said something that really I thought was really smart and interesting, and actually should be listened to by GM. We were talking about the Corvette, and the Corvette brand is going to enlarge, or they're going to expand, and they're going to have 2 SUVs. One's going to be essentially the same size as the Porsche Macan, and the other is going to be essentially the same size as the Porsche Cayenne. And we were talking about how, yeah, it's probably a smart idea. And you said, well, if they do that, it doesn't really make sense to continue on with Cadillac. And as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's so right. Because if you have that, you essentially have a Porsche sub brand of GM. And I think it would succeed way more than Cadillac does. And Cadillac, regrettably, now is really just the Escalade. And with that in mind, I looked back at Cadillac and I thought, okay, how are they doing now? And especially how would, how does it compare to how they used to be doing? And of course, the answer is not good. And then I went back and I knew that Cadillac was a sales leader in the luxury area, but I didn't realize just how much. And I went back and essentially went back. I went to 1955, but you can go back to 1945. It doesn't matter. And to say Cadillac was the U.S. luxury sales leader since 1945 or something is one thing. To see the list is another. 1955 Cadillac, 1956 Cadillac, 1957 Cadillac, 1968 Cadillac, 1972 Cadillac, Cadillac until 1999 is when it shifted. And since the year 2000, it's been Lexus, Mercedes, or BMW with no exceptions. And looking at 2022, number one, luxury U.S. car sales, Tesla with 484,000 luxury vehicles. Second was BMW with about 330 roughly. Then Mercedes about 270. Then Lexus close around the same number. Audi. Cadillac is number 6 in the U.S. and they sold about 134,000 vehicles. So you're talking less than half of what BMW sold and way less than Mercedes or Lexus. It's kind of sad. It's a U.S. company. And if you think about it, the only car I think that they sell that makes money is the Escalade. It's a shame.
It is a shame, and such a much lauded history and a car that people, at least when I was growing up, and probably for the rest of us, I mean, it kind of was the luxury brand. I mean, it's just and even it's funny. 2 days ago, I'm getting a quote on some insurance from a lady. We're on a Zoom call together, and we're listening, and she's mentioning the plans, and she says a phrase that we all know.
Yeah.
She said, this one is the Cadillac plan. And, there was a time that really, it epitomized the best. It was sort of a euphemism for, you can't do any better than this thing. And it sort of registered with me. I didn't interrupt her, but it sort of registered with me. I thought, that's been a long, long time since that was true. I mean, I'm proud for Cadillac having even gotten into just the everyday lexicon of being the best, but it is certainly no longer the case. I mean, they were engineering pioneers. Stephan's probably going to reference a couple of safety things that they came out with before anyone. They just really set the whole standard, and it just slipped away from them.
Well, I know you're going to talk about some noteworthy Cadillacs from the past, but Stephan, you're the one that really got this conversation going. Do you still think that? I mean, I think you're right.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Cadillac, they're failing. Yeah. So I think moving the Corvette will just going to steal the sales from Cadillac. They need the sporty SUV with the Corvette label. Be just genius. They'd sell a ton of them. But Cadillac, they have inconclusive branding identity. There's poor brand hierarchy, and there's no unique driving experience of a Cadillac anymore. Like the big floaty barge Cadillac, soft seats. Now they got the V cars, and then they got the Escalade thing, and it's just they're just mixed up there. And they're naming of the vehicles place. Escalade, a French name, used to have Seville, Spanish. Now they got numbers, and then now they got Lyric, and it's like they don't know where they are. And I think you're right. They start making Corvette SUVs, making Corvette a bigger sub brand with more vehicles. There's going to be nothing left of the Cadillac. I mean, I don't see where they are. Because think about what really is a Cadillac, okay? It's a Chevrolet Tramp, okay, that gets some threaded eyebrows, some caterpillar eyelashes, some lip injections, some Botox, put some silicone aftermarket parts on there. Well, baby, it ain't the real thing, man. When you undress it, it's just a Chevy Tramp, okay? So they just have lost their identity. And
Let me just interrupt you there. Because you're right. You're 100% right, Stefan. And I took a ride last weekend. I used a car service to go someplace, and it was a Cadillac XTS, and that is their kind of midsize. It's like basically their car service car, and it kind of relates to the DeVille, I guess, is the best way to say it. And I got in this, and there was no undressing, Stefan. It just was riding in the back. But anyway, but to your point, it felt like a Chevy. I was in the back seat, and this is supposed to be, quote unquote, a limousine. And the engine sounded like a Chevy. It wasn't comfortable. I didn't have a lot of leg room. And all I could think was, this is a Chevy. This is obviously a Chevy Malibu made into a Cadillac. It was not impressive.
Well, it's just a masquerading, that whole badge engineering that was supposed to be, oh, this is the efficient way to do it. And to some degree, you could say that Lexus is a badge engineered Toyota, but my gosh, they've taken it to the nth degree. They have separated the car. They've separated the driving experience. They've certainly separated the look to such a degree that there are many people walking around today, non-car fans, who do not know that an Infiniti is a Nissan or a Lexus is a Toyota, because they're so distinctive. A Cadillac, you have to walk up to it and read the badge on the grille to know. And, they've tried to put the Corvette DNA in there before. They've had the XLR, they had the Alante, they had various other attempts, and even the CTSV wagon, one of my all-time favorites. I would own one in a second. But that had the Corvette motor, and they sold like none of them, and it was just hard for them to pull themselves up by their own overworn bootstraps to be anything other than what they are, which is a masqueraded Chevrolet.
Yeah, I think, I just want to emphasize Stefan's point, which I think is really, really smart. The Corvette brand is strong, and we all know what a Corvette is. It's a powerful engine. It handles well. It's basically a Porsche. And just as Porsche was able to expand the 911 and Boxster, which is really all they had, and add the Cayenne and then the Macan, I think Corvette could do it. And also, Stefan, I think you're also right that this is basically dead man walking. It's a shame. So with that in mind, I wanted to talk about some of the noteworthy Cadillacs of the past. Back when saying something was the Cadillac of whatever, actually had, it actually had reason behind it, or a foundation of truth. And Adams, I know you want to talk about some of the noteworthy Cadillacs of the past.
Yeah, and there are a lot of them. This could be a whole lot longer, but I'm just going to run through it, not to overlook any credit due, because absolutely they were the peak. But it was started by Henry Leland in 1902, and he is the same guy, interestingly enough, that went off and started Lincoln after he got bought out. But he was very innovative. He was a machinist, an engineer, and they came out in 1915 with the first mass-produced V8. And there you go. I mean, that, like, think of all the V8s we have. They had the very first mass-produced one. 1930, he comes out with a V16. We think, oh,
right.
the Bugatti. They're the ones that have the V16. Well, Cadillac did it 80 years prior. Not too bad. And I mean, the V16 was this monster motor, which they continued. And back in the day, the V16 car, I thought this was interesting. It cost between $5,300 in 1930, $5,300 up to $9,000, which, to put it in today's terms, is 82 grand up to 140,000.
And that was the Depression.
Exactly, during the Depression, yes. And they sold just a handful, but obviously enough to continue chugging along. And they later produced a V12 after that, sort of to downscale. And look at that, going from a 16 to a 12 was considered a downscale for Cadillac. And in the 1950s, and I won't cover a whole lot of this, but they were the nameplate to have. If you had a Cadillac in your driveway, you were somebody. Well, it wouldn't be in your driveway; it would be in your 3 or 4 car garage, and people knew you. Oh, he's the guy with the Cadillac, and it was a big deal. And that was the Harley Earl era, the flamboyant designer for GM. And by 1959, the Cadillac, the Eldorado, especially the two-door, with the huge fins in 1959, that's either the pinnacle of that style or the pinnacle of bad taste, take your pick. But that was kind of what Cadillac was about. And then on into the 70s, as Stephan mentioned, they just got to be floaty and heavy and a big old 500 cubic inch motor, just sort of a gas guzzling car. And they didn't do anything terribly innovative. And if you look at some of the 70s Cadillacs, it's just like, wow, did they really do that? You know, these were tremendous wheelbase cars, super big trunks, everything about them overdone and kind of bloated. And then, you know, somewhere in there, you know, along about probably in the 80s, and I couldn't say what was the day the death knell started sounding, but, you know, America just sort of got tired of them. I don't really know, you know, it's this name play.
Well, the Europeans came in, the luxury European cars that actually were nice to drive.
Yep. You're right.
And then the Japanese.
Yep. But I think it started to me, from my recollection. I'm sure some car historian could say it better, but you know, Mercedes was already pretty decently established. But when BMW started coming out with smaller, fun, efficient, quick, good handling, good looking cars, it was like, whoa, those people, and they were not inexpensive. And those people know how to screw a car together, and Cadillac just continued kind of waddling along. And they attempted to try to be a BMW. They tried to be, like you're saying, Steph, they sort of lost their personality and they didn't know what they were doing. They tried to be Mercedes. You know, the Alante of the 80s was aimed at, squarely in the crosshairs, was a 450 to 560 SL. That's what they wanted that car to be. And they priced it exclusively as that. They hired Pininfarina to draw the car. It wasn't terribly attractive. It wasn't terribly fast, and it was grossly overpriced. And in 9 years of production, they sold 21,000.
What?
That
21,000
21,000. What a fail. And so,
man.
You know, and as far as picking notable ones, I mean, notable could be good, notable can be bad, but I'm afraid that was a dark point. And the Escalade came out in about 2001-ish, somewhere in there, and it was a sales success. But it's just a dressed up big Chevrolet, like we've been mentioning. And I would say that the whole of Cadillac, the reputation was so tarnished and so far afield from where we remembered them and where we sort of liked what Cadillac was doing, that by the time the CTSV and that whole performance brand, I hate to say it was a little too late, even though once again, the CTSV wagon of 2010 to maybe 2014 is just a fantastic vehicle, but it was a slow seller for them. I think they were off the path by that time.
In my mind, and I agree with everything you said, Adams. In my mind, the floaty Cadillacs, kind of what Stephan was saying, they actually, at least they stood for something. They were luxurious. It wasn't, you know, tastes changed, but at the time, people wanted floaty luxury, you know, like driving on a cloud, as they said. And then people didn't. And then once they didn't, they went to BMW or Mercedes. But to me, there were two things that really stand out in their decline. These were just big mistakes. Their first Seville was a sales success, but it was just a Nova. It was a Chevy Nova that was made into a nicer car. Come on, that's not good. And then very critically, because of the gas problem, they had their V864. And this is an engine that it was a V8 when you needed power, but it would only run on 4 cylinders around town, and it was supposedly going to save gas, and it didn't save gas. And those engines blew up or failed. They were awful. And I think, you know, the combination of diluting your brand by turning a Chevy Nova into a Cadillac and then using other division of GM's engines and transmissions, and then something stupid like that backfired, that was a terrible period for them.
It was a terrible period, and I'd almost forgotten about that multi-cylinder thing that they tried. You know, Honda did it later and did it successfully with the V6 Accord, but you know, Cadillac just couldn't pull it off, and they didn't test it. You know, they throw this thing out there claiming some great breakthrough technology, and you know, the most common modification to the V864 was to defeat
Right.
the V864 and just let it be a V8 like God and Cadillac intended. And if anybody ever wants to see a car that makes a Pontiac Aztec look like a supermodel, take a look. Take a look
I can't. Whoa.
Here we
Whoa.
go.
All right.
The
What is
pretty
it?
woman. There's no Julia Roberts.
Exactly. The 1980 to 85 Cadillac Seville, the one with the sort of Packard-esque trunk that looks like a dog doing something after eating something rancid. I mean, it's just not good.
That was terrible. It was a bustle back, is what they called it.
Yeah.
It was, and the back didn't match the front. Stefan, do you remember that car?
Oh, it was all, yeah, I remember. It's like it's like a gremlin. It's like what? It's like somebody took a knife and chopped off back end at the back end of the car, and thought it'd be a good idea. It was that was just the strangest looking car. Like it just didn't work.
Yeah, it was. That's really when they lost their way. It's when GM lost their way, and once the Japanese got into the luxury game in 1990, it was really over, because while Mercedes and BMW had damaged Cadillac, they didn't knock them out, because the Germans were just too expensive. They were not accessible. Once the Lexus came, and now you have price parity with Cadillac, but a much better vehicle, and of course even Acura and Infiniti, then it was really over. All right, so with that in mind, and I appreciate you noteworthy Cadillacs. I would add the late 60s Eldorado, because that was beautiful. But, Stefan, what were some of the technological advances they had, or safety advances, or what other stuff the Cadillac? Again, this is, it feels like a wake. Cadillac, I said, is dead man walking. I think it is. I think Stefan is right. Let's replace them with, just phase them out and let's replace them with Corvette. But with that in mind, since it's a eulogy, we got to talk good about the dead. Stefan, what was some safety innovations or whatever?
See, I'm afraid Stephan stifled on this answer, because he was going to say how much he loved the V864.
Now, Steve was asking me to do what's called a
sure.
shit. Yeah, Steve was asking me to do what's called a shit sandwich. You hit them hard, you fluff them up, and then you hit them hard again. So it's a shit sandwich. So he's looking for the stuffing in the middle is what he was asking me for. So here's the good part of the shit sandwich.
We're not beating them up. We're just reporting or discussing the reality.
It is a reality. Well, a couple, you wouldn't think of this as a safety feature, but it really is. 1912, the electric self-starter. Number of broken arms, broken jaws, broken faces by trying to hand crank a car when it kicks. Just think about pulling your lawnmower, try to think about turning over a car motor, and that thing catches and flips and hits you.
Stefan, did you catch the story, or are you about to say why that electric starter came out, like why Cadillac was so set on creating an electric starter?
No, I don't know. Fill me in. No.
One of Henry Leland's friends was killed using a hand crank starter, and he became absolutely obsessed with the electric starter.
There he is, Adams, man. That brain is so full of
Wow.
stuff. That's
It's
awesome.
leaking
Adams.
out.
It is. Yeah, there he is. The detail and the trivia, and your brain just never ceases to amaze me. And then 1929, synchro mesh transmission made it easier to shift. That's a big deal. And then safety glass in 1929 with the Cadillacs. That was a big deal. Yeah. Some other things came along through the years, but the last two noteworthy ones were in 1974, they put in the full airbag restraint system in their vehicles.
In 74, we had
1974 and Cadillacs, yes.
Wow.
And then something that I do think has not really caught on, but I think needs to, is their night vision system that they brought out in 2000, which is kind of like a heads-up display to augment what you can't see down the road. I think, now our ADAS systems are all the LiDARs and radars are helping you with that, like telling you emergency brake or stuff. But they started that with the night vision. I still think that's a good idea. I'd like to see that move further along. But so those are some of the, four of the highlights. But great story about Leland. I mean, hand cranking a car was a dangerous thing to do. And man, so.
Well, anybody who's ever attempted to crank a two-stroke motorcycle of any capacity knows how violently that can kick back. And just imagine doing that with a big automobile engine.
Mm.
Well,
All right, so
Cadillac-
let's finish up. So we're still before we we beat up on them. So let's finish good. So what are your? How about you? I think Adams asked her 2 favorite Cadillacs. So, so let's talk about. Let's finish with the good. So if you could have 2 Cadillacs, Steve-O, what 2 Cadillacs would you own?
1968 Eldorado, and that was advanced because it was front wheel drive, but I thought it was a beautiful design, absolutely beautiful car. And let's face it, if you get into one of these cars, it's really comfortable and drives like it's driving on a cloud. It's kind of nice. So we all like manual transmissions and that sort of thing. But let's face it, if you've had a long day and you're tired and you just want to make a couple phone calls and get home, it's nice to drive something that's really, really comfortable. So that old Eldorado has style and comfort. And the second one, I guess it would have to be the CTSV wagon. It was actually made. It was a one-off for Bob Lutz, who was vice chairman back then, and he said, I want the wagon, and then they did it for him, and then they said, hey, wait a minute, we should make this for everybody. I think those 2.
All right, I'm going to go next, Adams, and we'll let you finish since this was your set. So for me, I would have to have one of the 1930 to 40 V16s. The idea of owning a car with a V16, to me, that's just I mean, I would just leave the hood up, or actually that they folded up, just to look at that engine. That to me that's like me having a Merlin airplane engine in your car, that V16. And then I've always, and man, for me, the next one would be a 1959 Series 2 convertible. So this is the 2-door complete land yacht convertible with the 2-foot high fins with the rockets and the chrome, and then the bumper that looked like it's got turbos on jet engines on the back. To me, that's the epitome of that end of styling of that era. But it just, I don't know if I get it in pink like Elvis Presley, or whoever, but I with a bullet hole in it too. But I think having that, throwing the kids in the back, the wife top down, going to the drive-thru, getting an ice cream, and just floating down the road in a piece of American metal like that, which no one else in the world has ever seen. That would be it for me. All right, Adams.
Good picks. Well, mine are going to be boring because they're carbon copies, basically, of what you guys have already said. Stephen, you and I are just going to completely overlap here. I love that Eldorado style from maybe 68 to 70, if I've got that sort of body style. And mine would be black on black. There's just something mildly sinister looking about that car with the sort of knife edge front. It was a tough looking car, and I think it looks smaller than it actually is. I like that one a lot. Steph, on your 59 Cadillac, it's amazing. Both of you guys, being airmen, and you look at what that Cadillac looked like during the day. There were so many jet age sort of stylistic cues, from the hood ornament to the Dagmar looking things that looked like the front of a jet nose and then the big tails, the airfoils. It just really has so many jet agey looking things, but that would not be my pick. I've already shown my hand on this. It'd have to be the CTSV wagon. And I would get it in whatever they call it. I think it was a Firethorn red, which is an awesome metallic with the tan interior. And I would have to have a 6-speed.
Yeah, I'd have a 6-speed too. And I do want to I want to ask Stephan a question, but I would say for my Eldorado, it would be light green, like just a pale green with a dark green interior, leather green seats. I think that would be awesome. And Stephan, what color would your 59 be?
My 59,
it's got to be red.
Oh, I'd have in a light silver, the Chevy light silver blue, with a white interior. And nice. You guys were talking about the your Eldorados. I would get the Tornado instead of the Eldorado, because with the folding light stuff that disappeared in the front, to me that was just way cooler than the Tornado.
That'll be our Eldorado our Oldsmobile episode.
Okay.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah, no, I get a light silver blue with a white interior and a white top, man.
Be nice.
That's a good look. Well, can I throw in a third one? Can I get a 2004 black Escalade with the Snoop Dogg package?
Now, yeah, you need the V now. The V one, some ridiculous horsepower thing that they're dropping in that Escalade. But
Well, we're trying now. I do want to end up on a little bit of a high note too. We got to give credit where it's due. Cadillac has tried to be injected with some adrenaline in their racing program, and I was so proud of them, for hitting the racetracks. And I kind of thought they were shoring up and sort of finding their way. Sadly, the message is a little bit muted. So Cadillac, if you're listening, we are fans. We want you to succeed. But you got to shore up the messaging and the branding, and just get back on track or leave the track.
Yeah, I think there should be a connection. I mean, Porsche connects to their sports cars that they race. It doesn't really. I don't see the connection between racing at Le Mans and maybe Formula One. I know they're shooting for Formula One and selling a Lyric or whatever they're selling. It doesn't seem to make a connection. And by the way, you hit your high note when you talked about Snoop Dogg.
Who knew? Well, now we've got another hashtag to put on this episode.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, that's it for Cadillac,
episode, folks.
I hope they listen to us.
Well, you need to like, follow, and subscribe for tidbits like this. I mean, I feel like Cadillac has been given its due here in this episode, as well as Snoop Dogg. So, where else are you going to find this quality?
Well, I'm glad you guys are both back, Stephan, especially you. We missed you last week. It was just the two of us. So welcome back, and go ahead and close us out.
hey, it's great to be back, and thank you, listeners. And remember, like, listen, subscribe, tell all your buddies and girls and everyone. Check us out again next week. We look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye.